Wonderful to see so many names, so many organizations from our region, from our nonprofit community, folks doing such tremendous work for all the issues that we care about in the greater Philadelphia region. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Our goals for today, which are sort of reflected here in our agenda, are to give you a clearer picture of who we are, what we fund, our process, and important dates for you as nonprofit leaders and folks who are in charge of grant applications. I'm joined today by members of Impact 100 who are volunteer leaders of the various pieces of our grant making process, as well as one of our 2024 representative and recipient, there we go, there's the words, of one of our 2024 grants, who will be sharing her organization's experience with the process. The group is Alice Berman and Ali Glickman. They're our grants committee co-chairs. We have Joan Almaris and Denise Horan, who are our nonprofit liaison committee chairs, and those distinctions will mean something to you in just a few minutes. Cecily Morales is our Norris Square Neighborhood Project representative. Norris Square, we were thrilled to make a grant to last June in our 2023-2024 grant making process. We are also joined by Barb Renninger and Denise Rainier, who are co-chairs of our financial review panel, which is a critical part of our overall grant making process. Okay, so that's who's here, and they're here because they have a role in this conversation, and one that we think is meaningful and important for you. That being said, Impact 100, we like to always ground our conversations in our mission, remind us why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing all together. And so you'll see here in front of you Impact 100's Philadelphia's mission, which is to engage people who identify as women in collectively funding high impact grants that address unmet needs in the Philadelphia region and raise the profile of smaller nonprofit organizations. You'll see our vision, I'm sure is a vision you share, which is to support communities, to make them more just, equitable, safe, and healthy for everyone. Okay, of course, our grant making is the way that we realize this mission, is the way that we realize this vision, and that's what you're here to hear more about. And so if we can advance, thank you so much, to our grant making model. This sort of flow chart shows you the pieces of how our grant making comes together each year. And you'll see that we sort of are doing two things concurrently right now. One is building our grants pool through membership, and that is a process that will occur through November 15th of this year. And that's steps 1, 2, and 3 on that chart. So this is the time when women who want to support the nonprofits in our region and be part of our collective grant making contribute through their membership donation to our grants pool and our organization. And that closes on November 15th. Once we've done that piece of it, then we can move into what our grants pool is and so on. But for you all, while we are finding our members for this and every year until November 15th, we also open our application for our nonprofit partners to submit for funding for this year. And so that is November 4th today through November 27th. And so that is there on step 5, those dates, November 4th through the 27th of this year, where you all are submitting your requests for funding or your applications for our funding. Steps 6, 7, and 8 are what we do from January to June, which this is really the crux and the heart of our grant making process. For those of you who've attended one of these sessions before, you're going to hear a lot today that is familiar, but you're also going to hear some changes from last year. And if you are new to our process, you will hear that there are some changes from last year, specifically related to eligibility criteria and requirements, as well as how your application will be evaluated by our member volunteers. So keep an ear out for that today. Those will be, multiple people will be addressing those points at multiple points in this hour. So I'm just going to highlight that with a light touch here to keep an ear open for those things, because there are a few things that are different. That being said, moving from our grant making model to kind of the scope and breadth of our organization as a whole, we could advance the slide. Here is our growth and our trajectory in our history. So we were founded in 2009, and our first grant was made in that 2008-2009 grant making year with 111 members. Last year, we had 302 members. And so that means we started out in the beginning of our times, 16 years ago, with a grants pool of about $110,000. And last year we had 5 grants that we could make in the grants pool total of $284,750. last year. So since our founding, we have given more than $5 million in grants. And like I said, the grants pool is determined each year by our membership size. This is very exciting news to the folks who we were thrilled to support last year. Congratulations once again to them. We do our very best to shine a spotlight on those folks when we have our annual meeting and are able to announce that they are finalists and grant recipients, but here they are for you to see in all of their logo glory. We have Family Support Line, Healthcare Access, Norris Square Neighborhood Project, Rock to the Future, and Treehouse Books. And again, thank you so much, Cecily, for being here to represent Norris Square Neighborhood Project today and to share your experience and some highlights for folks who are applying for this coming year. Okay, that being said, now is my time to simply turn the rest of the program over to the rest of our speakers. And thank you very much for being here with us today.
So I'll take it from here. I'm Alice Berman, one of the grants co-chairs. And I'm starting off by sort of reinforcing that we make general operating grants, which makes us different than some others and makes our grants more appealing to many of you. We practice trust-based philanthropy, meaning that we believe that grantees, rather than the funders, are best suited to determine where their funds will have the greatest positive impact. And we try in evaluating grants or grant applications to make sure that will be the case and see how you propose you will have a positive impact on your communities. The applications, which are live as of today, should explain and will ask what your organization's mission is and who benefits from the services, and the who can be a community, a neighborhood, individuals of any particular diversity, how grants will strengthen the organization and its core mission, and how effectively the staff and board reflect and represent the communities of constituents it serves, and be clear about who those constituents are, and the why now. And the why now is one of the things we've asked in the past, but it's also one of our changes for this year. We will be focusing on, Denise, can you flip the slide? Thanks. Oh, I'm back. We now will have an increased focus on why now in the application. And the why now is, why is this a pivotal moment in your organization's journey for the Impact 100 grant? We will pay attention to this more than we have in the past while we've asked this question. The why now can be internal force or an external force that is making a particular moment in time important for your mission and your organization's ability to provide service. The other change is in eligibility. We now, anyone who received a 100,000 grant has to wait 6 years, which is 3 grant cycles, to reapply. And those who have received one of our smaller grants need to wait 3 years to reapply. Another change for most of you, anyone who's applied before, is we Impact 100 grants to people serving in 5 different focus service areas. But we will no longer be awarding by those focus areas. You still must provide service in one of those 5, which I'll explain what the 5 are shortly. But you can pick more than one area of service that you provide service in to let us know about. Part of the intent of that, and of all of these changes, we always are striving to improve. Part of the intent of the changes is to level the playing field among all of the applicants and not make you choose an area where you might think, there's more. Our members will think that there's more need in education than in arts and culture, or that you'll have less competition in one area or the other. So we're removing that. All of our changes are to increase the odds of you as applicants receiving a grant this year. So general eligibility has things that have not changed are you must be a tax exempt organization with IRS Section 501c3, independent of a fiscal sponsor. The base of operations must be in the Philadelphia 5 counties and serve residents of those 5 counties. The programs address one of Impact's 5 focus areas, which are arts and culture, education, environment, family, and health and wellness. The financial statements, which will be addressed in more detail, must be audited or independently reviewed for the prior 3 years, and those will be provided with the application this year. So 3 years of audited financial statements will be required with the application. You have to have a bank account in the local organization's name. So if you are an organization that may be a branch or a local of a larger national organization, you still must have a local bank account and be able to show that you control your funds. You must not have received a $100,000 grant from Impact since 2018. That's the 6-year rule, or a smaller grant since 2021, the 3-year cycle. Our funding preferences, these are not hard and fast rules, but they are preferences when our members review. And one thing that's important to remember about Impact 100 is we are not the Pew Foundation. We are not a foundation with professional reviewers. We are a group of women interested in contributing to the nonprofit community, and your applications will be reviewed by volunteer members who all bring their own backgrounds and history. We train everybody, but you're speaking to a crowd of philanthropists, but individuals. Anyway, so the funding preferences go for your annual budget of $300,000 to $3 million. Again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but if you're a $10 million or a $10,000 budget organization, it's probably not worth your time to apply. Organizations that address unmet needs in the region and have a high impact on communities they serve, that's of high importance to us. And the why now statement should reinforce that why you meet those needs and what the needs are. And then organizations that are led by a staff and board that reflect the diversity of the populations that they serve or their constituents. Now, things that Impact 100 will not fund, as we stated in eligibility, you cannot be fiscally sponsored organization. We do not fund debt reduction, operating deficits, interim or bridge funding, or endowment funding. We really want to fund more the operations of your organization. We don't fund individuals or private organizations or activities that are religious or political in nature. It does not mean that we won't fund you if you happen to operate out of a church building or provide services in those areas. It's just we won't, if you are a religious organization or promoting anything in particular, we will not fund you. And then we won't fund fund drives, annual appeals, fundraising events, or general capital campaigns. The financial information required for has not changed. Every application must include 3 years of audited or independently reviewed financial statements. In addition to applications, we'll have other information if you're invited to the second phase, which you will need to say that you have in the application process, which is the income statement and balance sheet for the most recently completed fiscal year, the budget for the current fiscal year, year to date year-to-date interim statement for the current fiscal year, and the IRS forms. Now I'm going to hand off to Denise. Sorry about that, Denise. You should have interrupted to explain these in much more detail. And Denise Rainier with our financial review panel is the one who will be able to answer your questions, and her partner Barb on all the financial information.
Thank you, Alice. I really think the most important thing for folks to understand when you're at this stage is if you are not in a place in the history of your organization where you have your financials independently audited, not compiled, but independently reviewed or audited, and have that readily available for 3 years, then you don't meet our base requirements. So going into it, we want you to understand that so you don't miss out on just spending time that won't bring you to the finish line. You'll be knocked out and ineligible at the outset if you don't have that. Now, you may have that. And if you have 3 years of audited or independently reviewed financial statements, include those with your application. And we take a quick look just to make sure that you met that requirement. And then if you go to the next phase, so all of our members review the applications that are eligible. And then when they get to the second round, then you would be asked for the items listed here, which is more detail and more current information, because there's usually a lag in when you receive your most recent audited financial statement. So recognizing that there is that lag, we then ask for the more current information if you make it to the second round. There is an opportunity for you to ask us questions if anything about that is unclear, and we are happy to respond to anything in particular related to that. But as long as you understand that the base eligibility requirement at the outset is those 3 years of audited or independently reviewed financial statements. We do that because our largest grant is $100,000, and that is our due diligence to ensure that your organization is at a place in its maturity where we believe we can evaluate your ability to handle $100,000. Oops. Is this the next one? Want to make sure we didn't skip a slide. Okay. Financial Review Group will be holding virtual office hours on Wednesday, November 13th at noon. And a link will be sent to all of the registrants of this event and posted on our website.
Okay.
And now I think Cecily's going to take over from here and give us a little history on how she, as a grantee, has utilized and what she thought was strong about her application that made them a awardee.
Hi, everyone. Just first of all, thank you all for allowing me the space to talk about this. I love grant writing, and I love writing for North Square Neighborhood Project. So I'm really happy to talk about it with you all today, and I hope there are some good questions. I would first start by saying that this is an opportunity to really think about how to give a overarching view of your organization. Imagine that no one knows anything about the work that you do or about where you are in or the work that you're doing, and try to give a very like broad view that just like zooms out, so that because there's just so many different types of people that you're going to be speaking to in this process. And then I would zoom back in to think about how your organization is doing work within the 3 areas that they spoke to, which is like justice, safety, and equity, and then dive really deeply into like giving core examples of how that shows up, not just in values, but in everyday practices in your organization. And yeah, how you link those bigger concepts of justice into your everyday practice of work. And then I would try to keep at the core that to remember that you're writing for people above all. Like, these are folks that are really caring and interested in the sort of like the humanity of the work that you're doing. And so as much as you can, try to bring that into picture and try to challenge the sort of like the norms of traditional grant writing is how I would call it, which is like where it's very like voyeuristic, and just talk about how like you're part of the community and like what that means to be sort of doing this. I also am a believer that our words create worlds. And so, as much as possible, trying to reflect the world that you're trying to build with the words we're choosing, and to be responsible for not perpetuating sort of like these up like top down views of our communities. And when possible, try to use specific words that deconstruct bigger concepts like empowerment or sustainability or community. And so, what do those specific things mean for your organization or for your practice? And trying to not just rely on these words that we think we all are on the same page about, but maybe we aren't. Maybe they're very different for each of our organizations. And one of the things that I would say about this application is that once we made it to the next rounds, it requires a lot of capacity. And so what we had to do was try to, as much as possible, tie it and weave it into things that we were already doing. So for instance, we were invited to the next round, which is the site visit, and we tried to pair that with our own staff lunch. So something that we've been wanting to do already. So we organized our staff lunch, and then we invited the Impact 100 group to participate in that with us. And then we invited a few students and our garden founder and a board member. And then one of the things we didn't do, but I would have changed it, is if you are invited to the final round, which is the submission of a video, that I would have tried to, as much as possible, have have like a student or tie it into our youth program or something more. It definitely was outside of our realm, and was a lot more work than we imagined it to be. And so I would have tried to combine it with something else as well, or maybe like think about how we could use it in the future, because it ended up being a very specific Impact 100 video that we would have to do a lot of editing to use it again. And those are the few things that I'm thinking about, but I'm happy to answer any questions if they come up. Thank you so much.
That was great, Cecily. Thank you so much. Having your perspective is really helpful. And you choose your words wisely, and they make an impact, as you say. So getting back to the nuts and bolts of the grants application process, the steps to apply for a grant are: confirm you're eligible. And I see from the Q&A, several of the questions are about that eligibility, and we will get to that at the end, because we don't want to waste your time having you apply if we're going to, find you ineligible. So check the eligibility requirements carefully. Consult with the grants. There's a Q&A on the website with grants and financial reference information, previously asked questions, and those should help you. And then access the application again through the website. The timeline is, as Kim said when we started, today through the November 27th, the applications are open, and we will then be reviewing your applications between December 1st and February 6th, which during that period, initially we review every application for their financial eligibility, that they meet our criteria, and for the other eligibility criteria first. And then it goes to our full grant review committee panels to review the applications in detail and nominate those who should move forward to the next phase, which is the financial review phase. So stay tuned. You will hear either way if you make it to that phase between February 5th and February 7th. Then you have a very short window to respond to that information, which is why we asked you up front to make sure that you have it ready to go. Because if you were requested to go to that phase, you only get 5 days to turn that information back to our financial review panel for review. And during that period of review, you also may be asked by the panel for clarifications or a little bit of additional information. And that runs through the end of February. Then from March 21st to the 27th, you will be notified if you will be scheduled for a site visit, which is on to the next phase. And then the site visits occur between April 2nd and April 23rd. And then finalists will be notified in early May, or by mid-May, I should say. Each of those steps, you will receive notification whether you're asked to move forward or you are not. So those notifications all come through Slide Room where you'll have done your application. So make sure that you have Impact 100 approved in your email so that you get notifications. And please notify us if the person who submits your application changes for some reason or leaves your organization, because that's where all those notifications go. If on the application you list one contact person, if that changes midway, you'll stop receiving the information unless you notify us to make that change somehow. So next. And this is basically how you would notify us for questions regarding the application contacts. These are the nonprofit liaison committee, which is Denise and Joan are your contacts there with nonprofit liaison at impact100philly.org. And applicants, as I said, will receive notifications. So this is the address that's listed here, info@impact100philly.org, that to receive notifications. And again, those dates, February 7th, if you're going to move to the financial review phase, and that will be due by February 14th. Site visits you'll be notified by March 27th, and we ask that you get those scheduled you'll be contacted, and we'll try and schedule those within a couple of days because they start on April 2nd. And I think that's it, other than what I've said. Applicants may receive requests along the way for additional information if we find questions that aren't clear in your application or there's discussion that brings up something new. So I think, Joan, you want to lead us off for answering questions?
Yes, and thank you to everyone who has been putting questions into the chat. I know some of them have been answered in real time, but I'm sure not everyone is paying that close of attention to it. So I'll be calling on my colleagues to reiterate their answers so that the whole group can hear them, and hopefully that will address things that haven't been answered yet too. So the first question we have is about our focus areas. And do you need to fall under just one of the focus areas? So Alice or Allie, I'll hand that off to you.
No, you can actually this year, it is new. You can apply in any of our 5 focus areas. You can apply to one or you can apply to all 5. So depends on your mission of your organization. So you get to choose this year.
And one of the things, we will not be evaluating by focus area. So you can pick 2 or 3 or 1, and it will not impact your likelihood of receiving a grant. It's just so that we know to qualify, you must serve in one of those, at least one, if not more.
Okay, I'm going to stick with grants. We have another question about the application itself and the word count. Is that a strict requirement or just a general guideline?
It's a general guideline. I don't think you actually get cut off, but please don't double the number of words. It's up to hopefully allow you enough to be provide a good information and explanation without making our reviewers have to read too many pages of applications or make you write more than necessary.
Great. Switching gears to the financial review portion, we had a lot of questions about this. So Denise, you spoke to some of this in what is required and why. So would love to start with reiterating what we require with the application: audited financial statements. How many years do they need to be audited and not just reviewed or compiled? Could you provide more detail on that requirement?
Yes, and this trips people up very often because you may be in transition, right? Where you maybe previously didn't have them and you're just coming into your own having them now. We do require 3 full years of audited financials. And that might take you a full 3 years of operation with audits to get there, right? Very often when you're starting out as a new organization, you may not have audited financials at the outset. So you have to have had 3 full years of audited financials. Now, if the most recent audit isn't finished yet, you can still apply if you have 3 full years of audited or reviewed financials. And the distinction is audited and reviewed is done by a third-party professional. Compiled is just you hand somebody information and they put it into a form for you. And that's not the same as audited because we're looking for that independent judgment from the auditors to determine your financial strength. And so those are required when you apply. And what we do then is we just look at what you sent us and make sure that it meets our requirements. There was one question about whether or not that can come in the form of 2 documents. Sometimes you will have an audit that has last year, this year, and last year, this year. We want to make sure that you do have 3 full years of audited financials. So if you decide to send it in the form of 2 documents, we'd have to make sure that that earliest time that's in the document was actually audited. So that's why we just want to make sure that you understand what's required.
Thank you, Denise. A follow-up to that just came in. Since we give 1 week to compile the additional financial information in February, can you remind everyone what is required in that phase right now so that they can make sure they have it available?
Barb, do you want to handle that or you want me to jump on it?
Go ahead.
Okay. The reason why we break this up is that most people, if you have the audited financials, you would have them. You'd have them on the shelf. You may not have the most recent year finished, but you would have them. The follow-up information is provided, it is in there to provide us with the most current information you have, because there's always a lag in the audits. It takes the auditors a little while. It takes you a little while to give the information to the auditors. It takes the auditors a little while to dig through and really understand so that they can provide an opinion. So the information that we request when you make it to the second round, you're not asked that at the outset. You're only asked for the 3 years of audited financials at the outset. If you make it to the second round, when you get there, then we ask for more updated information, and that is the current year information. In that period of time, you may have received the latest audit, but you may also have something that was provided by you, that was put together by you, that is your latest information. We have a template that we provide you at that point where you can fill in the information over the 3-year period and the latest information. And we ask for your current year budget, your performance in the current year. So that information, again, we would expect that you would have it, but it may be something that you would have to just keep an eye on to make sure that you are able to provide it within a week if we give you the nod in that second round. And that is our due diligence to make sure we have the latest and greatest information from you, and that our members then are comfortable that they know what is happening now and not just what happened maybe last year.
And I would just jump in, not as a financial person, but as a reviewer. And you explained this to me, that, for instance, the 990s, which could be available on a website, but they're often the current year hasn't made it there yet. So that, I believe that's also asked for at this stage, the current and past year.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes the IRS a while to publish them. So if the latest 2 years of 990s are out there and we can just go pull them down, we're happy to do that. Sometimes there's a delay, and then we ask you for the latest one that the IRS may not have gotten around to publishing yet.
Okay, I'm going to stick with this and another follow-up to this topic. If the organization's most recent audit is still in draft, should they submit the draft or should they wait until it's final?
For the application, give us your complete 3 years of audited financials. When you get to the next round, then absolutely. If there's something that's in progress, that's when we would ask for what's in progress.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to stick with the budget. Sorry, Denise and Barb, questions coming your way. There have been a lot of questions about how to connect the local chapter or regional chapter of a larger national umbrella organization to the local chapter. So the bank account may have a different DBA, or if it's in the local chapter, what sort of path are you following to verify that the bank account is the local organization's?
Barb, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm working the chat at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going back and forth. We just need basically an attestation that says this is an independently managed bank account that is controlled by the leadership of the local chapter of an organization. Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay. If not,
if not, there will be more coming
Q&A.
through in the Q&A.
Put it in the Q&A.
So another question on general eligibility. So these could probably be kind of rapid fire for anyone who would like to chime in. Our range for a budget of 300,000 to 3 million, is that a requirement or just a preference?
Preference.
Preference.
All right. And do we fund fiscally sponsored organizations?
Not
No.
at this time.
Thank you. Another quick question. Is there a time restriction on when they would need to spend the grant?
Spend the grant?
Mhm.
If they receive the grant, how long do they have to spend it?
You stumped us. They have to report on how, we do ask for some reports on how they're spending the funds over if it's the $100,000 grant, it's over a 2-year period. But to my knowledge, and we can get back on this, it doesn't have to be spent within those 2 years specifically. We want to see the progress that money is making and that it is doing what they say.
All right, thanks. I'm going to switch gears because we've gotten a few questions for Cecily and her experience as a grantee. So one of the questions is, what was the specific project that you chose to use for your application and what led you to that decision?
Yeah, so we didn't apply for a specific project necessarily. We were thinking general operating. However, the sort of urgency around land acquisition and land security was one of the main things that we were thinking about, especially as an organization whose pillar is community land stewardship. And all of our work, whether it's done with young people, which is like the youth leadership aspect of our work, or cultural preservation work, can't be done without the land. And so we chose to focus on that because it's pretty much the crux of the why now. Why are we facing this now? And we know that, like, with the aggressive development that's been happening in Kensington, that is just the reality of what we're facing, and that we need all the resources that we can get in order to start shifting the reality that our land is under threat. And so we made a very overarching first paragraph that talked about this. So like the threats posed by private development in our green spaces and gardens, and how our gardens are our living classrooms. And then we talked about how this would reduce the stress on our day-to-day operations. And some of the things that we were thinking of when we wrote this application actually couldn't be met. We were having discussions around what it would be to buy some of our properties, which isn't possible at the moment. And so then we had to have just a real honest conversation with the Impact 100 folks about the fact that this avenue that we were trying to pursue couldn't come to fruition, but that the resources would still be used towards our strategic thinking around how that is our long-term plan.
And I would, that perfect answer, and it emphasizes both the why now, and we are not a project funder. We're an operations funder, and because things like what Cecily say happen, we want you to further your mission, which is not necessarily project based.
Exactly. And I'll chime in and say I was actually on the grant review committee that reviewed Cecily's application, and what she has just laid out is a great example of why now. That obviously resonated with our reviewers. And then logistically, Cecily, how many times did you apply for an impact grant before you received it last year?
Actually, NSMP received an Impact 100 grant like many years ago. I don't know how many years ago. I'm sorry. I should have had that. But I think it was definitely around 10 years ago, something like this. And then I applied for the first time the year before, and we didn't even make it past the first round. And then this was our second time applying within my 5 years being, or like my 4 years being at NSMP.
Great, thank you.
Hmm?
We have had a few other questions, a few coming in about our focus areas. So could someone provide a little bit more detail, Alice or Allie, on what those areas actually mean to impact? So when we say health, what type of health are we talking about? Are we saying physical health, or the health of our society, the health of families, financial security? Similarly, education can mean a lot of different things, the environment. Could you explain how impact defines our areas?
Allie, do you have, by any chance, pull up that?
I'm pulling it up right now. So for health and wellness, those are organizations that empower wellness as a way to strengthen and improve the mental and physical well-being of community and people of all ages. I think she's pulling up.
Yeah,
the
that's what I was gonna say.
slide that
Can you
has
pull
the
up the slide?
definitions on
Yeah.
it.
I'm trying to. There
Okay.
we go.
Or you can let Allie share.
No, I don't have it on my computer. It was on my iPad.
Oh,
So family is also, oh, there it goes. So these are our definitions for our 5 focus areas.
And the answer specifically in health and wellness is, it is not like health is in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just throw in that for those of you who have applied previously, you may have felt challenged because many of the organizations that we've reviewed, the applicants we've reviewed, you do a mixture of these.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we made the change was that our members came back to us and said, sometimes when we're looking at an organization, they might be doing They might have an arts and culture mission that they deliver through education, or they might be serving families and improving the environment for families. So the overlap between them became something of a pain point for the members who are reviewing your applications, because they wanted to actually understand your mission a little better, which is part of the reason behind what Alice said earlier about putting more focus on why now and not reviewing through the lens of these definitions exclusively, but taking into account that your organization might do a variety of these.
Yeah, and I would agree. Many of them are there, and this page of definitions is on our website. If you need to further, reference in the future, you don't need to scribble furiously. And it is also in the application itself. The definitions are listed for you to check off one or more of. So the definitions are readily available for you.
Okay. We've had a lot of questions about how many applicants do we get, how many move into the second round, how many move to site visits, how many grants do we give out? So there was a specific question, how many grants did we give out last year? We awarded 5, 1 in each focus area. However, as you've heard repeated, we are changing that. So we may not be giving 5. And Alice or Allie, which one of you would like to walk us through the process from start to finish?
Sure. So last year we received a total of 172 applications, and we did award 5 grants. We did 2 $100,000 grants and 3 $28,500 grants. The way it works
5 focus areas.
in
Sorry.
the 5 focus areas. Yes. So the way it will be working this year is we will be moving on a total of up to 36 organizations to the financial review phase. And from that point, 12 of those organizations will move on to site visit. Depending on our grant funding pool that will be announced in December, we are hoping to give away up to 6 grants, 1 $100,000 grant and 5 smaller grants, and those totals will be determined by the grant pool in December.
And I would add the smaller grants will be a minimum of $30,000
Yes.
each. That's one of our rules.
Okay, so as applicants move through the process, can you speak to what sort of feedback or information grantees will be given if they are not selected to move forward at any stage?
They'll receive a letter or a notice of moving forward or not at each phase of the process. And then specific information can be requested after the grant process closes. We do not give it midstream. So after the final voting happens and the finalists are selected in May, we will give feedback, but not until that point.
Okay.
And I think there are probably some people here who have had feedback before. We're always happy to give feedback on why or why not people didn't move forward or did.
Sure. We have a couple of questions actually about the site visit portion. And if your organization does not have a physical facility or are a remote organization, how does the site visit part work?
The jump in if you want to rally.
Sure. I mean, I think you can go. It's in different applicants have done it different ways. Where they might host it offsite at a partner organization and bring us in. And we've had in the past a Zoom site visit, like remote ones as well.
But we prefer that we meet on site, and many of the organizations don't have an office per se or their own space. What our members really like to see is your organization in action. So if you provide some service in a school and you can get permission for us to come into the school, that may be a bad example because schools are pretty restricted these days, but or an art center, or you deliver in a senior center, or you deliver outside in a park, or you've done something with a planting or a garden. Our members really prefer to see you interacting with your constituency, as opposed to, we don't want to be sitting in an office with you. We want to see how it works.
Great. We have a couple of questions about the video requirement that Cecily brought up. So could you speak to that? I know it's required fairly close to the end of our process, but what are the requirements? What should they include? The length, all those sorts of logistics.
I will say that because of things that Cecily said and others, we are actually considering, the video has been required only for what in the past has been the 5 finalists. If you make it to the finalists, it's been required as a tool in our ballot packet for our full membership voting, as a way of understanding the organization better. However, we're considering not doing that this year to limit the burden on the finalists, because, as Cecily said, if it can't be used for others and it's time consuming for you, that we're always trying to reduce the burden, which is also why in the numbers that Allie gave, how many are moving forward, it's less to FRP this year, or financial review, than it's been in the past, because we only want the people who have the best shot of getting to the end to have to go through that next phase. So we're always trying to give you, if you have to do something, give you a better shot of getting to the end. So you have a 30% chance at that point. No, not that. A 20% chance at that point, and at the end, a 50% chance, if there are 12 site visits and we give 6 grants. So the video, we may or may not require it. I'm sorry to say that we haven't gotten to that point, but it is at the end. Only if you're a finalist, you have to provide it. It is a maximum of a 3-minute video. It can be done on an iPhone, and there are guidelines as to what to include when you get to that point, which is mostly sort of introducing us to your organization and a little bit of the why now. I would say, but more to come on that.
Okay. You just gave yourself a great segue, Alice. Going back to the why now question, we've had a lot of questions. Is this an application for general operating support, but we need to describe a project? Should we submit an application if it's a pilot project for an organization that has been around, but the project has not been? If we submitted an application last year for a specific project, should they change that now going forward? So can you give some more insight into the application, and then again, reiterating our focus on why now?
I would say on the why now, and I'll be short and turn it over to Allie while you're thinking. We're not project oriented. I mean, we really try not to be looking at a specific project. So if there's no reason to change your project this year from last year, if it's a pivot point in the organization, and perhaps a pilot program might be the exact pivot point. It depends what it is. I can't, blindly say, but I think it's a little bit even to what Cecily was doing. If there's something that's occurring now in your organization, if it's something that maybe came out of your strategic plan and you're trying to implement, or something that's happening in the outside environment that makes it strategic right now, or something happening inside your environment, like you were a fiscally sponsored and you no longer are, and now you have to build your back office up, or you have the potential of a new staffing position that's required because that's the only way that you can free up your volunteers to get to the next step. It's something that's making you take a step. It doesn't have to be a project. It can be very operationally based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a project. We practice trust-based philanthropy. So if you want to tell us about a project in your application, we trust that you know what's best for your organization. So tell us about it.
A great way to wrap it up. And we have 3 minutes left. So I have a final logistical question, and I apologize if we have not gotten to your questions yet in the chat. We've had some very specific questions, so we will make sure to follow up with you directly and make sure that that's addressed in our FAQs as well. So if an organization is not headquartered in the Philadelphia area, but has existed for many years, but they've only been in Philadelphia for 2, are they still eligible?
When we do the eligibility review, we look at your 3 years of independently audited and reviewed financial statements. It sounds like from that description, you may not be able to provide that, which might make it difficult for you to be eligible. But if you can provide that, then of course we would consider your application. So it really goes back to the eligibility requirements. And if your business model is such that you can't meet the eligibility requirements, you might have to wait until you can, which might make you have to wait another year. So
And if you've only been providing service, regardless of the financials in Philadelphia, 5 counties for less than 3 years, you won't qualify. You have to have been providing that service here, not be a.
that service here, right, which would be evidenced in your application along with your financials.
All right. With that, we will wrap up and let everyone move along with their day, and we will let everyone get started on their applications. So thank you so much to all of our presenters for taking time to be here, and special thanks to Cecily for joining us for the grantee perspective. I also want to give a huge thanks to all of you for attending, and thank you for your interest in our grants. Reminder, as you are completing the application, review our website, check your eligibility, check our FAQs. Our financial review panel, Barb and Denise, will be holding office hours next week on Wednesday the 13th. So if you have any questions that have come up, anything that we sort of answered today, but you still have questions on, I highly recommend registering for that session next week. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us via email as you're completing your application at nonprofitliaison@impact100philly.org. So on behalf of my fellow panelists and the rest of the Impact 100 membership, I just want to say thank you so much again for your interest. And we're really looking forward to seeing all of your applications over the next couple of months. Have an excellent week. Thank you.
Thank you.